If it's meant to be, it should be easy, right? Wrong. Let's talk about that and other lies. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Edgy Entrepreneur Podcast. We're in season 2, and the overarching theme of this season is relationships. And we believe that if you want to be an influential leader in your community, you must be able to develop your art of creating positive relationships in the workplace, at home, and within your community itself. So as always, we are your hosts. I'm Daniel Tribby, healthcare entrepreneur and coach for those of you who are also healthcare entrepreneurs. And I always have the pleasure of doing this with...
My name is Coach Oriana Guevara. I'm a life and personal performance coach, executive coach, and a certified relationship coach.
Woohoo! Let's jump in. So let's do this whole idea today. I'm really fascinated about this because I think a lot of people have this idea that if something's meant to be, that it's going to be super easy or should just happen naturally, right? Have you heard people say this before?
Yes, all the time. And it's actually a great excuse for not doing the hard work.
Right.
So we're going to get into that a little bit. But today's episode, if it's meant to be, it should be easy, and other lies that you've heard many times and maybe didn't realize that they were lies. So that's what we'll be talking about today. But it's this idea that, it's actually quite prevalent in the marketplace, and especially among young people, amongst early entrepreneurs, right? If that thing is meant for you, if it's meant to be, if that's your dream, then it'll just come to you. It'll be easy, right?
That relationship, right?
Yeah.
When I find the right one, it's just going to be easy. It's just going to all fall into place, and magical unicorns and rainbows and sunflowers and lollipops will appear.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make in their relationships, because if you believe that if this is meant to be, it should be easy, then you're not actually going to be willing to do the work that not only a relationship requires, but that your business requires. Or the work on yourself, right? Like the self-work that actually is difficult in and of itself to do. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people have this particular thought process because they want the easy out, right? I shouldn't have to do the work. It should just happen. It shouldn't be hard, right? But what we know about relationships is that nothing in a relationship is easy, right? We find infatuation in the beginning with certain things. Oh, I like you. You look this way. You act this way. It's great. But then all of a sudden, we don't fold the towels the same way. And if you don't fold the towels the way that I ask you to fold the towels, and it's no longer easy, and so screw you, I'm out, right? And it requires more than that, right? It requires a communication level that's deeper. And it requires people to actually come together and have vulnerability in their conversations. Right? So that they can move forward past little roadblocks. But anytime you perceive a miscommunication or a difference of opinion as a roadblock, and you turn around and say, well, I guess it's just not meant to be, you're just taking the easy way out of things, right?
Yeah. I mean, every relationship requires effort. And I think that there's certain aspects of certain relationships that can or could be easy or easier, right? Relative to the context of the situation. But, every single relationship in and of itself requires some degree of effort just to keep it going, right? Just to keep it alive, just to stay involved and to be present with one another. And if you're not willing to make that effort, then, and that other person isn't willing to make that effort, what typically would happen in that relationship, right? Like, nothing, right? Dissolution, right? It would dissolve into nothing, right? And so, at the most basic level, we know that relationships require some degree of effort. And when you're not willing to make the effort, or when you don't make the effort, you're actually subconsciously sending a message to that other person, which is like, I'm not willing, or I'm not available, right? Like, I'm only available to reach a certain level of depth in this relationship with you. And after that, no, right? Like, I'm not here for it. So that's something that you want to be conscious of, because if you are thinking that you want new relationships, healthier friendships, or like that you might be ready for a dating relationship or a serious relationship, but you're not actually getting to the depth of the relationship with yourself and making the effort to do that just within yourself, you're not going to be willing and able to do that with another person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we can talk about how this shows up in your relationships that you mentioned, dating. So we'll talk about how this potentially shows up in your relationships, and then also how it might show up for you professionally.
Yeah.
So I feel that in relationships, sometimes you have these people that have these check boxes, right? Like, oh, he checks all the boxes. Or hey, she's pretty great. She checks all the things. She lets me be a man, right? You get all these boxes checked, right? Which if you have a checklist of boxes, I hate to tell this to you, but that is not anything more than a barrier to your ability to create a long-lasting relationship, right? That is filled with communication, effort, vulnerability, all of those things. I can't stand when people say, I don't know if you've heard people say this to you, he checks all my boxes.
Yeah, I mean, usually that just comes from kind of like this kind of giddy and enthusiastic place where people are early on when they find someone that they're excited about, And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to like have a list of things that you desire in a partner. It just depends on like from what place inside of yourself you created that list. Right. Like if you're still in your wounds from when you grew up and in your childhood trauma and in your past relationship trauma, and you make that list is going to lead you right back to what you've already had. Right. If you have actually done your healing work and, gotten complete in your past relationships, have, faced kind of like the dark side of you and how you show up in relationships. You've taken personal responsibility for things that you've done in relationships that were not so nice and not your best self. And then you make that list, right? Then you would be making that list really from a more holistic, healthy place, where you could actually potentially attract a completely different type of partner than what you grew up seeing in relationships and what you've had in the past. So.
Right. And from that standpoint, we're talking about somebody who has good self-leadership, right? Who's able to create a reality where this is the type of relationship that I desire versus check boxes for a particular person and their attributes, right?
Yeah,
of all these
superficial
things.
attributes.
Right,
yep.
Exactly. So where you see this coming up in your relationships that's not great is you have a lack of leadership, right? So there's poor self-awareness, there's poor ability to be vulnerable in your relationships, right? You just, instead of being able to have the tough conversations, you just shut down, right?
Yeah, you kind of avoid conversations, avoid conflict, maybe thinking, I'll pick my battles, but never actually expressing yourself in the relationship, which leads to building up resentments toward that other person. Not communicating your boundaries and then not holding the person accountable for them, or holding yourself accountable to your own boundaries, right? Emotional abandonment, which is, there's like the physical abandonment of leaving a relationship, but there's also the emotional abandonment, which is like the emotional, like just I'm checked out. Like I'm not
disconnected from you. I don't want to hear what you have to say.
Right. I don't care enough to do the work or to be in this with you. That kind of thing. And you talk about, lacking vulnerability, usually when people end up in relationships with other people where that person is emotionally unavailable, what they don't realize is that the reason we attract emotionally unavailable people is because there's something that's emotionally unavailable inside of ourselves.
Exactly.
And so it makes sense that would be in your blind spot because you're not emotionally available to see it, right?
Right.
But you got to look at like, what's that relationship reflecting back at you?
But if it's meant to be, then they should just accept that about me.
Right.
Right. I don't have to change that. Right. Here's another relationship thing that we come across. Yeah. If you would change everything about yourself to fit what I would like, that would be perfect. Right. That's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't work like that. And especially not when you are in a relationship with a partner who has done their work, who has gone through their healing process and has raised their consciousness and is secure in their attachment style. They're not going to be willing to stay in a relationship where their partner is just like, you should just accept me at 30% of what I actually have, capacity for,
Absolutely.
Like, that's just not going to go. How about in business? How does that look?
In business, this shows up a lot with your inability to communicate on like, okay, let's say you have a partner and you guys have decided on the end game. You've decided, all right, we're going to build this business and we're going to go to this point. This is where we're going to take it to. This is our vision. But then you disagree on the method of which to get there.
Sure. Yeah, that's common.
Right. And because of the disagreement, you now have this perception, well, it was easy for us to come up with the end game, but now we're having friction and we have difference of opinion on how to actually get there. So I guess it's just not meant to be, right? Or it's not going to be easy. So we just abandon. Yeah. Right. So that happens a lot there. The other thing is rigidity when you need to make a pivot. Right. So think about companies like BlackBerry. Where are they right now?
Yeah.
Nowhere.
Non-existent.
Right. Because Apple came in and Samsung came in with phones that were very, very different. And BlackBerry stayed on their laurels about what specifically they thought their customers wanted out of their phones. And they refused to pivot. And they just thought to themselves, well, we have a certain amount of people who love what we have, and it'd be too hard for us to make the change and to develop new software. And now they're non-existent. Right. So those are a couple professional sides where people just think, oh, it should just stay this way. It should just be easy. It should be just natural migration. And all this new stuff is just new stuff. I don't need to change.
Yeah, I mean, that's just that's one like a well-known example of something that happens in the marketplace very frequently, which is, the needs of the marketplace change, and either you as an entrepreneur or your company fails to adapt. Right. Because adapting would be harder, right, than me just continuing to go down the path that I'm already on, right? So, and that's what happened with BlackBerry, right? Also happens with like finding the right people to hire, right? Yeah. Finding the right people should be easy. If it's meant to be, it'll be easy. They'll just show up in my world, right? That's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, if you're asking the right questions.
Right.
So a lot of people just hire someone because at their phone interview or their first in-person interview, when they put on this beautiful facade of I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you thought that they were, so you hired them. Right, versus digging deeper, right? This is usually a problem because you accepted someone at face value rather than digging deeper into whether or not their vision for their life or what you do as a business had connection. Right. And so because it was perceived as an easy person to hire, it ends up not being, because you hired them based upon a facade that they put on as a human being rather than a connection to you as a business. And so you think to yourself, oh, it should be an easy hire. We need people who connect with us and people should want to work here, and it should be really easy because we're so great, right? Wrong stance to take.
Or, you're hiring somebody because you're in so much pain now. Now you just need, like, if they're breathing, you're hired,
Right. That's prevalent in healthcare.
And I've heard people talk like that before about their own business environment, and like, it's anybody who puts on even a basic level of interest, like, oh, do you want this job? Here it is.
Right.
We need somebody to start yesterday.
Yeah. You know how to answer a phone? You're hired. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well done.
And so like the hiring might have been easy, but stewarding that person through the employment experience probably isn't going to be, because you didn't do your due diligence there, right? This idea that hiring people should be easy. How about in teams, right? Like that's such a multidimensional relationship dynamic. What's been your experience there?
Yeah, well, different people have different thought processes, right? And a lot of times we tend to believe that everyone should think like us and that would make life easy, right? But when everyone thinks like us, we miss a large piece of the personality pie that would allow us to see things from different perspectives and make better educated choices on the direction we should head as a team, right? So a lot of times I use the alphabet a lot with this. So if I'm an A through M type of individual, I shouldn't want to just work with other A through M types of people to make my life easy. I should want some N through Z people that see things differently, that bring different attributes and different personalities to the table so that it is not easy. I want to have conflicting thought processes in a very constructive manner, right? Not a destructive manner. But we tend to want to hire people that are the same as us or work in teams of people that are the same as us.
Well, they're
so
more
it's
fun.
easy, right? So it's
easy.
easy. But here's the thing, you're going to miss when stuff appears to be easy, you've missed a large piece of the pie because you haven't had enough personalities and input from the other areas that you need in order to have the best product or the best service possible for your business.
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting part of that dynamic is that you won't even realize that you're missing something because you're so enthusiastic about how easy this is and how much it feels like it's flowing. But what's missing is completely in your blind spot because you don't have anybody in your team or your organization that could actually see that thing and point it out.
Right. Exactly.
So we talked about, what this could possibly look like in your relationships and in your business, but this limiting belief, if it's meant to be, it should be easy. What's the real impact on a person who is walking around in their daily, life experience thinking this way, really taking that on as the truth?
Yeah, they have an unwillingness to invest any effort into a situation, right?
Yeah.
And that can be, if you're a person who's willing to invest effort and another one is not, it's equally as defeating. You're like, I'm invested, I'm here, I'm showing up. And the other person's just shutting down.
Yeah.
Because it's difficult for them, right? It's hard because growing requires change, right? And so when you're unwilling to grow, you're unwilling to invest effort in yourself and therefore in another person or into a business venture.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Where I see that decreased effort or unwillingness to make the effort really showing up for executives and entrepreneurs is that this belief system will actually lead you to an inability to be able to see the final outcome that you desire, right? So if I can't see how making the effort today will actually give me the outcome that I want, if there's a disconnect between how much effort do I really need to invest in this in order to get me where, right? If that's hazy, the place that it'll take me, I won't be willing to make the effort now. Right. So you see there, that's a fundamental lack of clarity between how much effort really do I need to invest in order to, right? Get my business off the ground or get my business profitable or get my marriage to work, right? Whatever that thing might be, if you don't have clarity and on that end result, and that end result might involve the relationships with a lot of other people, you won't be willing to invest the time and effort. I mean, a lot of relationships break up for that reason, right?
Right. I think too, that time, human beings are a poor estimator of time, right? So unless we're going fishing, we can estimate approximate size, right? Or I can give you a comparison, right? And the reason I use fishing is because for those of you who are Southern like I am, the fish gets bigger every time you tell the story, all right? But from a size standpoint, I could say, oh yeah, it was about the size of a grapefruit, right? And you would understand precisely what I mean. But we are very poor estimators when it comes to time, right? So if what I think is going to maybe take a month ends up taking twice that long,
right?
I'm more inclined to shut down and be like, oh, it's not worth the hassle. It's not worth the effort. I must not really want it that bad, right? If it's going to take that much time to achieve it. Right, or that much effort over the long haul. So we're really poor estimators of time.
Yeah, it results in discouragement, and discouragement is one of the biggest killers of, consistent, meaningful action. You know? So you have this, limiting belief, and it creates this really big blind spot for you, right? Where you're not able to see any other possible way. Right? This is what I want people to realize. It creates a really myopic view, right? You're literally walking around looking at your business or looking at your relationship with blinders on, in that you can't see anything other than what it is right now. Right? And if you can't see anything other than what it is right now, and you can't see how increasing your effort could change what it is right now, which is presumably a painful place, right? Then you're not going to be willing to actually invest the time and effort that it takes, which in Coach Tribby's point is probably a lot more time and effort than what you think it's going to take.
Exactly.
Right? So
exactly.
That's really the whole point of why we want to bring awareness to this limiting belief, right? If it's meant to be, it should be easy, because this could destroy your business and your relationships.
It very much could. And I think too, you mentioned you're in an inability to see any other way. right? That's also a very rigid way to approach anything, right? My way is the only way, and it only can be this way, and I'm not open to seeing other people's ways or listen to other people's thought processes, right? Because if it's going to happen, it should just happen. It should happen this way, and I shouldn't have to change shit about myself or the way I feel about it, right? It's very rigid, right? So this is a huge impact on you, but I think that there's a certain part of you that likes that, because you get a secondary benefit from it.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
So what is the secondary?
Yeah,
what's the secondary benefit that I get here?
Yeah. So there's this concept called payoff or secondary benefit, which means like in some way, somehow, I am benefiting from all of my limiting beliefs, right? Whether that's because my brain is using that limiting belief to ensure my survival, or my brain is using that limiting belief to help me make excuses and justify staying in inaction, right? And staying out of the game, basically playing small, whatever the hell you want to call it, right? But your brain's goal is to help keep you safe. It's not to help you thrive in life and relationships, right? So if you're hanging on to this limiting belief, this is a moment for you to really come to what I call a moment of truth with yourself, which is like, how am I benefiting from believing that if it's meant to be, it should be true, right? For example, if I believe that, if that's my belief system, then in my relationships, I can justify continuing to remain emotionally unavailable up to a certain point, right? Like, I'm okay investing in the relationship until I hit that wall of where I'm willing to be emotionally available with a person. And then at that point, then I can just justify pulling the ripcord and getting out of the relationship, because if it's meant to be, it should be easy, and it just got hard. So I'm out. Right?
Yep.
That's the secret payoff. Now I'm out of the relationship. I can blame it on them. And also I don't have to confront my own emotional availability and do my self-work. That's the payoff.
Yep. And then there's another part where you mentioned this is a justification for playing small in my own mind, right? And I can shop on my own mental clearance rack, right? Instead of digging deeper into my actual capabilities. So that sounds like this. I should just be thankful for where I'm at. I'm grateful for everything that I have. I don't need more than that. And we're taught this bullshit.
Yeah.
We're taught to just be, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be grateful for the things that you've achieved, for family, for friendships. I'm not saying you shouldn't be grateful for that. But when you use gratefulness as a justification for not stepping into the full person that you should be, that's some bullshit.
Yeah, if you're
That's
telling
an excuse.
yourself, like, I should be content, I should be grateful, I should be more appreciative for what I have, and if you're telling yourself that, which are all true statements, but if you're saying those things to yourself in order to cover up, like, feelings of, guilt or something like that,
Shame.
over, like, the fact that you're not taking action in something that would really be very meaningful for you, like, I'm not going to do that because I really should be content with where I'm at. I really don't need any more. Like that, you got to see that that's your payoff right there, right? Like you're saying those things in order to keep yourself in inaction from the meaningful work that you could be doing, and that maybe you're even feeling called to do, but is scary to step into, right? So those excuses and justifications are helping you avoid confronting your fears.
Right. They keep you in a false sense of safety. Right.
Correct.
So, and it allows you to step out anytime it gets painful or too hard, right? So we call these the order of consequences, right?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so everybody wants what I call the third order of consequence, right? So let's use exercise, okay? Diet and exercise, just because this is easy and people can understand it. So I'm going to lose weight and get healthy and get my bathing suit body ready, my summer body, my bedroom body, whatever it is that you guys want, right? And in order to do that, I'm going to start a new exercise program and I'm going to start a new diet program and I'm going to bring sexy back, okay? Well, what you want is the third order of consequence, which is I'm healthier, I'm leaner, I look great when I take my shirt off
Feel
or
good.
whatever, I feel great. That's what you want.
Yeah.
Okay? But there's two other orders of consequence that come before that. The first order of consequence is that you hate yourself for the first 6 weeks because you're hungry and your body's fucking sore. Like you don't want, this sucks, right? And so then you can start to justify in that phase, which is what most people do. Do I really want this? Like, is it really that important?
Right.
Like,
is
man,
this worth the effort?
Right. This is tough. Why isn't this easier? And this is where most people quit. And then, right, you quit in your first order consequence because you've only considered the third order.
They also don't see very much weight loss during that time period.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe they had like an initial boost of weight loss and then it plateaued.
Right.
In the 6th week.
Exactly. Then your second order is where you actually start to gain traction, right? This is where more momentum happens and you start to gain traction, but you also get criticism at this point too. So this is why a lot of people quit at this point also, because as they start to gain traction, they move up the mountain towards their goal, they start to get criticisms. And so there's still a pain point here. You're seeing progress, but there's still a little bit of a pain point. Yeah. So they quit here. And if you keep moving beyond that second order of consequence, you do get to your third order, which is your goal, right? But here's the exciting thing. When you reach that goal, there's also another goal that comes into place. So the process repeats itself, right? So you hit to that third order of consequence. Okay, I feel better. I'm healthier. Now I want to do a fitness competition, right? Now I want to take this next. So guess what? Rinse and repeat. First order consequence, pain. Second order consequence, traction plus criticism. Third order consequence, I reach the goal.
Yeah.
All right. So what's happening is if it's should be easy or it's natural, it should just happen, you're only considering the third order of consequence, which is the goal.
You want to skip the first two.
You're trying to skip the pain and then the traction and growth section. You know, you're trying to bypass that, and that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And if you don't realize that you have those 3 orders of consequence and you kind of are mentally skipping over the first 2, that means that you don't have the tools in your toolbox to address the first and second orders, right? In the first order, you need a very high level of persistence, right? And high level of conviction.
Diligence.
And then in the second order, you need to increase your velocity, right? By like a lot, right? 3, 4, 5 times more than ever before in order to like break through that level of resistance that now you're getting internally and externally.
Yep.
Yeah. So what do you think about the law of attraction? Because what I find is that a lot of people really are utilizing this mindset. If it's meant to be, it should be easy. And then they're tying it into this, I guess, this universal law called law of attraction. And, you know, it's basically the idea that you can think and believe your way into manifestation. What are your thoughts?
I think there is some magic in believing, right? But I believe that people think that if I just manifest it, I put it on my vision board and I write it down, that's enough. All right. Well, if God wants me to have it and I pray about it, I'll get it. If he doesn't want me to have it, then I won't get it. And I have a question for all of you who've ever thought this, right? There is some magic in believing. I'm not saying that is not true. You have to believe something, have a desire for it, write it down, live it and breathe it if you want it to come true. But do you think that is enough? Just asking for something? Are you going to just magically get it because you asked for it? Or are you going to get the opportunities to stretch yourself to get it? So first order, I got to believe it. I got to believe it. I got to believe I'm worthy of it. I've got to find the self-worth, the self-awareness, and the desire for growth to have it. But then I actually have to go and take action to get it. Right? I can't just attract stuff because I have this magnetic vibration that believes I'm going to be the next president of it. Like, fuck, no. You can believe it, yes, but you have to take action to actually get it.
Yeah.
And this is where people make the mistake.
Yeah, I think law of attraction is a good start, especially, well, I should say it's a good start for certain people. And it just really depends on where you are in your personal growth journey. But law of attraction is about you becoming a vibrational or an energetic match to what it is that you desire, right? In and of itself, like Coach Tribby just said, it's not going to bring you the thing, right? I think the word attraction is probably what causes a lot of confusion. You know, what it does is it brings you what are called the cooperative components of the thing that you want.
Right.
Right. So like you are changing, law of attraction is about changing your belief system so that energetically within yourself, you believe something new and you can attract new and different things, meaning cooperative components, right? So you want a new business partner or a business partner that matches you and is aligned with your values. And like all of a sudden you start to believe in that. You start to change your belief system. You start to become a vibrational and an energetic match for that. The chances of that person showing up in your world start to increase. right? You start to put yourself in certain places and spaces and situations that could potentially lead you with a higher likelihood to finding that person. But when you find them and then you recognize like this could be the person, you still need to take action.
Right.
You still need to talk to them. You
Yep.
still need to approach them. You still need to approach them and talk to them to create a relationship initially, and then talk to them about this idea and desire that you have and see if it's in alignment for them too, right? Like if it's not in alignment for the other person, then they're not the one. They're not the match, right? But could they help you get closer to the match? Did talking to that person and putting yourself out there in a vulnerable way, like now stretch you to grow in a way that when you do find the next person that could be a match, and this could be in dating too, like now you're like more willing, you're practiced at least one time in having that conversation, right? Hey, I want this. This is the path I'm thinking of getting there. I'd really like a partner to do that. Does that align for you? Yes or no? You know?
No, it's great. There's two big things here too, right? It's great to manifest, but you also need to figure out what it is or who it is you have to become in order to have that thing, right? A lot of people, you miss the point. Like, I want these things. I want $1 million business. I want to live in this country club. I want to travel the world. I want to do all these things. You want the thing, but you're unwilling to do the work to become the person who can get the thing.
Yeah, which means that you upgrade your values and your belief systems.
Right. And once you do that, you're vibrating at a different level, which means you're more likely to attract that thing that you have manifested, right? But then here's the other part of that. When you find that thing or that person and you've now connected to it, the work's not over.
It just started. It's not easy at this point either. Yeah.
It's not. You're going to have to work with this person to overcome disagreements, to overcome different thought processes, to come together in a vulnerable way to decide what is the best direction to take, whether that's in your business or in your personal life. Those two steps are what people forget in this law of attraction thing. It requires an evolution of you, and then once you have that thing, it will require another evolution to maintain it.
Yeah.
Or to move to the next part of it.
Yeah, a continuous growth cycle, right? Which never really ends.
Exactly.
So how about this idea of working for it, right? Making effort, which is what we've been talking about, right? If it's meant to be, it should be easy. No, we're saying if it's meant to be and you know, the cooperative components are showing up for you, you need to make an effort.
Right.
You need to do some work. You need to take some action, right? But what do you think is the difference between working towards something and fighting for it? Because I hear a lot of people talking about fighting for their relationship, fighting to make it work, fighting for their, you know, business or a friendship to, you know, whatever. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so if I see one more of y'all make a TikTok about like, oh, if you're not willing to fight for me, then I don't want it. Like, you better get your dumb ass out of here. Look, if I'm fighting for you, it means I'm fighting to defend myself typically. Or I'm fighting for something else, right? If I'm fighting, that's a very like obligatory negative terminology in my personal opinion, because usually if I'm fighting, like let's say you and I have an argument, if I'm fighting you, it's because I'm fighting my own belief system and I'm resistant to what it is you have to say. That would be what fighting is, right? Now, if I'm working with you. Right? You don't fight with somebody, right? Unless you're like fighting on a football team against another team. But when we're talking about professional business relationships or personal romantic relationships, you don't want to fight with somebody. You want to work with somebody.
Yeah. Why do you want to make that person your opponent?
Right.
Or your competitor? Right.
Or this little thing that I hear, the ball's in your court now. Fuck that. The ball's not in my court. We're on the same team. Stop talking about how you're going to throw me the ball and wait for me to make a decision and throw it back to you. That's stupid. How about you get on this side of the court with me? We pass the ball back and forth on the same side. Yeah. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I can't stand people say the ball's in your court right now. The fuck? No.
It's the idea of us against this conflict, right? And even if the conflict is we have a disagreement, it's still us against the disagreement, not us against one another. I think this is where people get it wrong. You know, I spent 17 years in a relationship fighting for it, like literally fighting for it. My nervous system activated in fight or flight or freeze for 17 years, right? Never, ever again. And I am so clear in my conviction and my value system and on my boundaries. Never again will I ever fight for a relationship. And everybody who's in relationships with me knows that, right? I've said it before, right? Like, nobody is a hostage in a relationship with me. I will show you where the door is at. You're welcome to go at any time, right? Like, I value your freedom for you that much, right?
Yeah.
And I love people enough to let them go in relationships, But I think we really need to dispel this myth that if somebody's not willing to fight for you, then they don't care about you or they don't love you, right? What it is that they love themselves, right? Like, if I love and care for a person I'm in a relationship with, even if that's my staff member, my business partner, my romantic partner, whoever it might be, my parent, my sibling, right? I love them enough not to build up resentments toward them. Right. And if I let them put me in a position where I'm fighting to prove how much I care or how much I love them or how much I give a shit, then what I'm doing is allowing that person to activate my nervous system, and I'm allowing them to be in a power position over me. And the moment that you let somebody be in a powerful position over you, you're going to build up resentment towards them, because them being in a power position over you by default puts you in a disempowered position, which means that your boundaries have been abandoned, right? Because you abandoned them. So, we have to understand that there is a difference, and you have to have the discernment to know the difference between making effort and doing the work to make a relationship move forward and grow versus fighting for a relationship, right? And
or fighting for someone, right?
Something to work out, right? Like, no.
Like, you should be fighting for me because I'm such a gem and a jewel that you should be fighting to keep me. Better get your manipulative ass out of here.
I mean, a lot of people actually, they're in such a place of hurt that this actually is something that feeds their ego. They need to know that another person is willing or able to bend over backwards for them, for their affection, for their attention, for their love. And if they're not willing to bend over backwards, then you must not love me or care about me, And so to you, listener, who's out there, maybe in a relationship where you find yourself doing this, like, this is hitting home for you because you're like, oh shit, I have somebody in my life that keeps constantly asking me to fight for them or prove my love or care for them. Every single time that they do that and you actually go after that opportunity, so to speak, to prove that you love them in that way, you're abandoning yourself. And you're telling yourself that you don't love yourself, right? Love yourself more, love yourself enough to recognize the difference. That's what I mean by discernment, right? You got to recognize the difference between, like, when a relationship moves from, like, effort and work that makes it worthwhile, and even when it's hard, you actually grow your bonds together by moving through that, versus, like, this constant, like, up and down, right, roller coaster type of relationship where you're, having these different moments where it's, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you. No. Say no to that in every circumstance.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, there's a couple times you mentioned the word grow, right? Grow. So when you're stuck in this idea that everything should be natural or easy, and if it's not meant to be, you're in what we call a fixed mindset, okay? You are stuck where you are and there is no change for you, okay? So when you're in a growth-based mindset, okay, you understand that growth is not easy. It requires effort. It requires vulnerability. It requires so much more of you to stretch beyond what you were once capable of, right? And then if you are going to develop a business that's worth its weight in gold, or you're going to develop a relationship that's worth its weight in gold, it's going to take work and it's going to take growth. And you're going to have to understand that this growth mindset is hard. It sucks, right? Because it forces you to look at yourself
all the time
and understand, okay, well, what's happening in this situation? What did I do to get me here? And what can I change in me to change my outcome? Versus the fixed mindset that says, well, it was somebody else's fault. If they had done this, then I wouldn't have failed. If they'd have done that, then I would be this way. If they'd have done that, this would be easy. Okay?
Well, the fixed mindset also says, I am this way. And because I'm this way, I was born this way, this is how I am, this is who I am, I'm not willing or able to change. but it also projects that outward and goes, that's how you are. You're this type of person, you're that type of person, and you're not able to change, right? And so
I can't stand that when people say that. Well, that's just the way I am. Huh? No, that's the way you chose to be. That's the way you chose to be.
That's the way you've decided to be.
Right. Because looking at yourself from a different light and deciding to change that is difficult.
Yeah, it requires you to take personal responsibility. Like I mentioned earlier, you got to look at your shadows and look at where you've not been the best version of yourself, and stop blaming other people. This is one of the first things that you could see in people who haven't done their self-work is a lot of blaming, a lot of judgment towards others, but no personal responsibility or acknowledgement of where they have done and engaged in the same behaviors that they criticize others for engaging in. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like they're wrong for doing that thing, but I had justifiable reasons for doing that thing. Mm-hmm. And if you're there, you're not in personal responsibility in any way, right? And so that is that fixed mindset that Coach Tribby keeps mentioning, and so in order to understand, like, going through that process of personal responsibility and full ownership over your own life, while it feels bad because that's the growth experience at first, you come out of that feeling good because now you have, ownership and empowerment in your life, and you can own your stuff. You can actually make that commitment to growth, knowing that, like, I know what I'm committing to, right? Because I know me and I acknowledge me and I accept me and who I am and what brought me here today.
Yeah. Right? And I want to help you guys if any of you have ever done this listening, if you've ever thought to yourself, if it's natural or easy, it should just happen. It shouldn't be work. This relationship has become work. It shouldn't be work. It should be easy. So we're going to talk about how it is you can break through that thought process, right? And Oriana just mentioned the first part of that, which is committing to the growth, right? Commit to the growth first, all right? And you have to commit to the growth on your own.
Yeah.
All right. This is the hard part, right? Because there's a question that I know you get a lot in the relationship world, and I want you to talk about it, but you have to commit to the growth on your own first. I'm not saying that you can't grow, you can't find ways as a couple or as a business partner to grow together. I'm not saying that, but you have to first be committed to the growth on your own.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Which seems like maybe common sense in some ways, but a lot of people, especially once they start their personal development and growth work, right, and they kind of move past the painful part, they start to get into the part where they feel better, then they start to look out there, right, and looking at you and going, like, you really need to fix yourself.
Right.
Right.
I need you to do better. I need you to step up.
You should read this book.
Right.
You need to watch this, right? Like they start to get to this place where they, start to kind of externalize some judgment towards other people. And so the question in relationships inevitably becomes, how do I get them, right? How do I get my partner, my friend, my business partner, my sibling, my parent? How do I get them to change? Because I've been doing my work, right? How do I get them to be different? And the key here is that you don't, right? You don't get them to do anything, right? You have to understand what you're actually asking for here. You're actually asking, how do I control them? How do I make somebody do something? How do I exert my influence, maybe even forcefully on them to get what I want? As a coach, I'm not going to teach you how to do that, right? The best way to get anybody to do anything different in a relationship is for you to do that thing different. For you to do whatever it is that you want them to do, you start doing it, right? You want them to be more vulnerable, you be more vulnerable. You want them to communicate more, you want them to be kinder, you want them to be more respectful, whatever it is that you want them to do, right? Look at yourself and do those things and work on the reasons inside of yourself that are keeping you from being that way already.
Yeah, get out of the if-then mindset, right?
Yeah.
If they do this, then I will give them that. Get out of that. Give them in hopes that they will return that.
Yeah, you change you. And then when you change you and you start showing up differently, people around you will start to respond differently. Yeah. Whether that's because they recognize that you have firmer, more assertive communication, whether it's they realize that you're actually holding them accountable to your boundaries, right? whether it's because they feel like you're being more loving and affectionate, right? Like whatever it is, they're going to respond differently to your new vibration and energetic level.
And they will naturally ask questions.
They will naturally ask questions. And if your new vibrational and energetic level is pleasant, right? Which in theory it would be, because if you're doing your self-work, they will want to raise up to meet you, right? Versus you moving down here to meet them where they're at in their anger, in their frustration, in their resentment, and whatever they're at. Right?
Absolutely. And then second piece of this puzzle is finding alignment in what you want to co-create. All right. It's very easy to see the end game. Okay. It's very easy to picture the goal, right? Hey, we're going to start this business. We're going to do some podcasts. We're going to put out this many episodes a year, and then we're going to tag on these little pieces of it. And we're going to get to a point where we're executing and getting this much revenue.
Yeah.
But we may not always agree on the route to take to get there.
Sure.
Because we're going to have different points of view. So what we have to understand, and I mentioned this earlier, is that you're not always going to agree on the steps to take. And that's okay. Because everybody has a different point of view. So seek to understand their perspective.
Yeah.
And then allow them to see your perspective, and then work jointly together to decide what is the best route. And if that route doesn't work, guess what? You have a backup plan, which was the other person's idea. You try it, right? Just because you don't agree doesn't mean it's not easy, right? It doesn't mean now it's hard, so it's work and we shouldn't do it. It means that, hey, we have a different plan of attack or a different perception of the plan of attack. Which one should we try first? Right? They'll come in alignment on how you're going to co-create it, and then work out the details in a very vulnerable, cohesive state, and make decisions based upon the direction you want to go, not based upon who you believe is more right than the other one.
Yeah. I mean, that's not uncommon in relationships. I think the other thing is that you have to have a willingness. You know, you have to be willing. If you're not willing, your relationships are not going to work out. You're always going to have a breakdown, right? Like every single time that you hit that any type of resistance, if you're not willing, that's basically like throwing your hands up like, well, I'm done because I'm not willing to even face that resistance, right? But you have to have a willingness to stretch together as in the relationship. Doesn't matter the context of the relationship. This could be your kid, right? You need to have a willingness to stretch beyond what you each think is possible to create together. And you have to have a willingness to stay in it, right? Or I call it the messiness. Stay in the messiness together and not abandon the other person, either physically abandon or emotionally abandon, right?
Yep.
I think a lot of people, especially, if you haven't done your healing work and you are in a dismissive or a fearful or an avoidant attachment style, look that up if you're not sure what that means. Or if you're in any type of attachment style other than a secure attachment style, you're going to be really quick to want to pull the ripcord on any relationship as soon as you feel the resistance. You're not going to be willing to stay in the messiness, which is like, we're going to grapple with our feelings. We're going to talk about the hard things, right? We're going to face one another, even if we feel bad. Like, we're going to say the things that need to be said to clear the air and move forward, right? And if you're not willing to do that, right, the first, second, or third conflict that comes up, your relationship's going to end because you're not willing to move through it.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And stay in it with the person.
Yeah, let's talk about fitness again really quick, right? Which growth do you get, or which rep do you get the most growth on? So if I'm doing my bicep curls, trying to make my arms bigger, right? Which rep do I get the most growth from?
I don't know, maybe the last one.
The last one. And here's the exciting thing, right? I get the most growth from the last rep, but research studies and physiology show that when the brain says no, the muscle physically has 2 more reps left in it.
At least.
So this is what we talk about when we say stretch. Have the willingness to stay in the messiness, right? And if for any of you have ever been in a workout program and you feel like you're trying to get this last rep out and your brain is like, I can't do it, I'm burning, it hurts,
stop now.
It sucks, quit, bail, run. You have 2 reps left in you. 2 reps left in you. So keep that in mind, right? Stay in that messiness. Stay in that place and be willing to continue to work, because the most growth comes from the last rep that you can get in.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're going to find out that once you've stretched yourself to a certain point with 100 pounds, right? Now you're going to have to go up to 125 pounds, rinse and repeat. Again, order of consequence. We already talked about it, right? And you go to 125, and then guess what? You want to grow some more, you got to go to 150. Apply this to your logic inside of growing inside of your personal and professional relationships. It's the same thing. You have to be willing to stretch beyond. And usually problems are the things that force us to learn about ourselves, about another person, and allow us to stretch into the next evolution of ourselves. And anytime you think it's supposed to be easy and you bail, you have robbed yourself of an opportunity to grow as an individual because you were unwilling to stay in the mess.
Yep. Very true. Yeah. The last part is to have effective communication, right? You got to have effective communication. If you find yourself being invalidated in a relationship when you make a vulnerable expression, then you're going to lose trust in that relationship, right? If you're invalidating other people that you're in relationship with, right? Invalidating means like telling them that they don't need to or shouldn't feel the way that they feel, or that what they believe or think or desire is wrong in any way, right? Like you shouldn't want that, or you shouldn't think that because that's not what I meant. Well, that wasn't my intention, so that shouldn't be what you're thinking right now or what you're feeling. That's very invalidating, right? And that's not effective communication. So if you want to be able to change this, right, moving from this fixed mindset to this growth mindset in relationships, meaning getting out of this belief system, if it's meant to be, it should be easy, which is killing all of your relationships and your business, you got to be able to engage in the hard work and to communicate with one another in a way that is more effective, right? Right.
You know, my favorite part about effective communication, the number one skill in effective communication,
listening,
is non-communicative. It's shutting the fuck up and listening. That is the most effective communication skill there is. Listen, and listen without judgment. And listen without taking your own perspective into account. Listen to the other person's stance. Where are they coming from, right? Where is it that their belief patterns come from? You don't have to try to change the belief pattern. You don't have to try to change the value that they're expressing. You just have to listen and understand, okay, they see things from this perspective because of this reason, right? And if I invalidate that reason, I'm essentially telling them that I don't value them and I'm invalidating them.
Yeah.
And now they're going to have a trust problem with me. Okay. And if you shut down because, this just become work, that's what it's become. Relationships become work, and you shut down, you're also invalidating them, right? Because of your unwillingness to communicate effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. That happens so much with parents and kids, think about that. And then what kids often do, young adults, whatever, doesn't matter. What they do is that they stop going to you as a parent for your support,
right?
To hear your thoughts, to get your advice. They just won't talk to you anymore, right? They'll find somebody else to talk to about their questions and concerns.
Yeah, because you're immediately judging them, right? You're immediately saying, well, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done it this way. What were you thinking? Instead of saying to themselves in a very vulnerable, very compassionate and empathetic way, hey, I get it. You're not the only one that's ever made that mistake. As a matter of fact, when I was such and such age, I did the same thing. And so let's talk about how we could potentially look at this a little differently and what you think you could do to handle yourself differently in that situation.
Yeah.
Right? This is effective communication. It doesn't always have to be scolding or telling somebody else they're wrong or what they need to do. That I can't stand. Somebody's like, you know what you need to do? You know what I need you to do? Take your opinion and move it somewhere else. Right? So effective communication.
Yeah. And so we talked on episode 10 of the podcast about your need to be right could be sabotaging your relationship. So that's another conversation that's worth listening to if you haven't already. And this episode, again, has been, if it's meant to be, it should be easy, and other lies. So if you took away something meaningful from this episode today, please share it with somebody that you know who is also growth-oriented and that you'd like to improve your relationship with. How about that?
That would be great.
And also, we'd like to invite you to join our Facebook community where we are meeting with our group live every single Friday. We also publish blogs once a week in addition to this podcast episodes, new episodes released every other week. If you text the word Edgy, EDGY, to 33777, you'll receive a link on your phone so that you can access our community and join us there where we can interact with you. You can ask us questions and receive live coaching. Yeah.
Sounds great. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you guys on our next episodes. Take care. Stay edgy.